basically, just gonna kind of start things off with, I'll give you a quick little introduction of myself. My name's Sean Guinea, by the way. I've been recruiting in my entire life for coming up on about a decade now, which makes me feel old. But I've definitely gained a lot of experiences in my time. I started off recruiting truck drivers for waste management and have worked my way slowly up the flagpole until I finally found my passion for working in games. I've always been a big nerd. Loved video games since basically the original Mario on the Nintendo, and never let them go since then. And I always love remembering when my mom used to say, "Well, you're wasting your time with video games." Well, look at me now. I've made it. I've been in the gaming industry now just about 2 years now. In October will be my second year with Wargaming, and this is my first foray into the gaming industry. And I gotta say, it's just an absolute blast to be working in an industry that not only you're passionate about, but it's just a fun time. Like we make things that bring people joy and entertainment, and probably also a lot of aggravation because let's face it, gamers like to complain about things. But at the end of the day, they're complaining about something that they enjoy. It's not working on healthcare or insurance. It's not, working on, something that is maybe necessarily like a requirement for someone to have. More something that people just get to do to relax, or something that people do to just unwind from a stressful day at work. And so kind of being in an environment and an industry that really facilitates that, it is something that I can truly get behind every day, and I get to wake up every morning excited about what I do and who I get to work with. So yeah, definitely being in the gaming industry, if you're interested in that, like, it is a great place to be. um, yes, if you want, you can always download it. That could
A
be.
disconnect and reconnect helped.
I did the meeting chat is where I posted it. You can
Yeah.
download it there, and you can upload it to Google Slides, and it may have a little bit of funky formatting issues, but you'll still get the gist of it. So even if you don't have PowerPoint, you should still be able to open it in Google Slides and at least more or less follow along with what's going on. Okay, cool. Amazing. Well, I wanted to, before we kind of get into, the meat of the slides itself, I wanted to, kind of open, explain a little bit about more than about the gaming industry than what people kind of just assume, because if you look at it without really being involved or in the industry, there's a lot of nuances to what actually goes into making a game. Normally you think about like, okay, well, we have obviously the engineering team. Like that's the big thing is, okay, everybody's got to be an engineer. And then you think about it a little more as like, okay, well, there's definitely artists, right? We have people who are, actually making the things that I interact with. But then there are so many more things, and I wanted to talk about just kind of the general idea of, the different types of departments that go into making a video game, because sometimes the most direct path into what you want to do, into what you're working in, is not always the best way to get in. So like for example, myself, like I don't do anything good enough that should make me a part of the gaming industry if I wasn't a recruiter, right? Like this is my branch into the gaming industry. And now that I'm here, if I wanted to start polishing up my art skills or start learning a programming language on the side, that's something that I could do and then work my way into if I wanted to, say, a gameplay engineer over time. And these are things that you can kind of do, as like an alternative path than the most direct route, because sometimes that is the best way to do it. So, outside of what you would typically think of like engineering, like the various engineering positions and art positions, like There's also design. There's, from like game design, gameplay, level design, that sort of stuff. You have audio. I mean, you don't think about it as often, or at least not many people think about it, but audio is a huge part of a video game. There's nothing worse than hitting an enemy with a big, powerful attack just to make us a little dinky noise, and not feel the impact of what you'd put down. So, audio is a huge thing. So learning different programs like WY's Fmod can be very beneficial. You have teams like, QA. I mean, not only manual QA testing, but automation QA is also a really big thing. So if you get really good with Python, and learning to kind of write automated scripts to do testing, that is certainly something that you can, a different way to kind of get into it. And manual testing is obviously a really good foot in the door. For a lot of people who maybe want to be game designers or artists. Those are very competitive. Talents to have, and there's a lot of people vying for those positions, and not as many people, not as there are people. So a lot of the times, what you'll find is people will jump into a manual QA tester out of college, and then work in that area for a few years, get the knowledge and the experience inside that company, and then transition into something that they really love. And I've personally helped transition about 6 of our QA team members to various positions in the company. Most recently, we got somebody from QA into a UX designer role, and also somebody as a technical game designer. So there are plenty of opportunities as long as you kind of, are kind of going down that side path. You can still make an opportunity for yourself in the desired position you want, as long as you have the patience for it. Um, and then, of course, you have things like analytics. You don't think about this, but like game data analytics is huge. So thinking about, well, maybe I really like engineering, but I like data more than I like, writing gameplay stuff. And so, that is certainly an area that you can still find plenty of opportunity in the gaming industry, is just, kind of more about analyzing how players are doing what they're doing, what they like. And then, of course, there's publishing. So you have plenty of things more about the community engagement, community managers, marketing, video content creation. I mean, the list goes on, copywriting, editing, things like that. And then lastly, of course, HR. I mean, at the end of the day, or not HR, but admin, because at the end of the day, this is still a business. A video game company is a company. We are there to make money, to make profits, so we can pay our people to do it over and over again. And so things like human resources, office management, finance, security, again, may not be the sexiest way to get into the gaming industry, but is certainly an opportunity. If that is a path that you want to take, you can certainly go that way, and then find a roundabout way of getting into what you really want to do at a later point. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that, because I think a lot of the times when people who are not super familiar with the industry, or haven't really done like close examinations of what goes into making a gaming company, this kind of helps broaden people's horizons, and kind of gives them a better perspective of, what is available and what kind of goes into making it. So, enough of my high horse on that. We'll kind of talk a little bit about wargaming itself. Now, we've kind of talked a little bit about this in the very beginning of when we were setting things up, but, we've been in operation since 1998. We started off, I think, really at like 150 people, moving on, currently sitting a little above 5,500. Now, we are global in 18 locations around the world, and have an active player base of 200 million players globally. So this we've definitely done quite well for ourselves over the years of being of making games. Yes, so thank you. Next slide. You can see this is kind of where we're sitting right now. You'll see right down there, the third one, Chicago, Baltimore. Those are 2 separate locations, but from a PR perspective, they apparently combine them as one. Don't ask me. I don't get paid enough to debate that with people. So, but we do in the U.S. We do have 4 locations: Baltimore, Bellevue, Chicago, and then Austin. Austin is doing something different than the other 3, as Austin's a publishing house for tank ships and then business intelligence, whereas Baltimore, Chicago, and Bellevue are solely purpose for these offices is to create, and support World of Tanks Modern Armor, which, if you're not aware, is the console edition of World of Tanks. Now you can go on to the next slide for me. So again, this is just reiterating the things I had just mentioned, so we can kind of move forward from here as well. So these are, we'll kind of go through these quick. This is just our big flagship games that we are actively recognizing. So the three PC titles, tanks, ships, warplanes, these are all developed and mainly supported overseas. Though, as I mentioned, we do have a publishing team for ships and a publishing team for tanks in the US as well. And you'll see that with a lot of gaming studios is that you'll have smaller publishing hubs kind of around the world because, as a publisher, entity, you want to be supporting the community that you're representing, right? So obviously the tanks and the ships teams in Austin are primarily supporting the U.S. player base, but you would also find a different team for the people who support the German player base or are APAC or Asian Pacific player base. So you typically will see kind of a lot of these smaller publishing hubs kind of scattered around the world to support the game itself in different regions. So we'll move on to the next one, which will showcase these are the console titles. So we do have console, tanks console, which is what we work on here, and then ships console, which is called Legends, that is worked on, I believe, in St. Petersburg. Don't quote me on that. It gets really complicated when we start talking international wargaming stuff. We'll go to the next title. And we see here that we have two mobile titles that we're actively supporting right now, Blitz and Blitz for tanks, Blitz for ships. So we actually have a very competitive scene for Blitz and the tanks in the US, which is very interesting for kind of like an esports scene. And what's interesting though about kind of having all of these separated, and you can kind of tell that we have different titles for them, is that all of these are different entities. So they're all separate IPs from one another. So what Tanks Blitz is doing versus what Tanks on PC versus what Tanks on console are doing are all separate. And this is why we don't do crossplay between them, because the player experience is more or less customized for what the players want. Mobile players want something different than what PC players want, and PC players want something that's different than the consoles want. So we are catering our games specifically to the player base that we're supporting. So if you were to, say, for example, download tanks on your PC and tanks on whatever console you might have, you would actually see a very different experience from start to finish. At the core, it's still tanks, it's still the fundamentals are still there, but you're going to definitely see a much different experience from the user perspective. The kind of tanks that are in play, the maps, the different like menu items, the different way that everything kind of like the user flow goes, everything is very separate from one another. So as a entity in the US, we get to basically develop tanks for the console as if we were our own studio away from the rest of wargaming. We very rarely need to interact with what the global teams are doing because they don't share the same player base. We know our market, we know what people want from our game, and so we're kind of the experts on it, and we will basically make our game to fit their needs. So that's kind of a nice thing where we're not just limited to being so heavy on brand, and we can really do what we think is best for our players versus just making sure that we're staying in line to try to accommodate everybody, which is never possible. Go to the next slide for me. So we'll go through these real quick, but this is just a real fast example that of how active we are in the gaming scene. So you see that we've been to several of these big events, especially pre-pandemic, and we do hope to continue this in a post-pandemic world. But you can see we've been at Tokyo Game Show, Gamescom in Germany, E3 in the US, and back in 2017, I think that picture was taken. And all of these we have major events. And if you can go to the next slide, this is I think really cool because back in 2019 we had our first ever like Wargaming Fest, and we basically had just a big old tanker day where everybody came out from all different countries to Minsk to kind of just do like a big, or basically our own con. And we had over 250,000 people attend this event live. So, nowadays that'd be a huge COVID hotspot, but in 2019 it was fantastic to see. So we can go on to the next one. And then we have more professional, we attend more professional development cons so as well. So DevCon, this is this is basically GDC for Europe, but we also do attend GDC. We have plans to attend GDC in 2022. Been currently working on making that happen as we speak. We can move on to the next slide. And oh, good, they populated. So we've also won several awards and actually have two Guinness Book of World Records still in play. So wargaming, this is all just to kind of continue to reiterate the fact that, our game, while we may not be the Fortnite in America, we're basically the Fortnite of Europe. We are an extremely popular game, especially in Europe. And, we do very well for ourselves and maintain a very stable company because of it. So go to the next slide for me. So, real quick, this is Wargaming Forge, and that's kind of what we're all here to talk about today. This is essentially the internship program. Last year we started to, put a little bit more of an emphasis on the internship program to make it a more robust program overall. And we have then kind of since defined it as the Forge program, Wargaming Forge. And we are basically trying to now implement that into the US. So now, as far as Forge goes, in the US implementation, it's still something that we are continuing to build upon. In our international studios, it's a much more robust program with, additional training classes and all these sorts of things. As of right now, for wargaming in the US, this is just more going to be a way to kind of, bring everybody together, kind of under the same umbrella of Forge. So it's more so just a branding perspective at the moment, but definitely will be something that as we continue forward with it, for more interns every year, we're going to have more and more things to offer as we continue to be in line with what the global team over in Minsk is doing. So we'll go on to the next slide. So this is just kind of talk about what we're offering for our internships. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this. But basically, this is really just an opportunity. Like I said, it's an opportunity for an internship. It's for us to grow you as a professional. It's to, get you that experience from out of school. And the idea, though, is that we are actively trying to convert interns into full-time employees. Always. Like, as long as you have a good experience with us and we have a good experience with you, the goal is to, at the end of that internship, to make an offer. Even if that means you were a junior and you won't be able to start until you graduate from your senior year, that offer will just be out there in existence and basically say, hey, you plan to start with us, upon graduation. So that is kind of the idea behind our Forge program, is really not to just give people the experience as an intern, but also to take them and give them their first full-time job as a professional in the industry. So we'll go ahead and move on now to the next slide. Okay. This again, these are just some numbers. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on that. Total number of interns, total number hired interns. Again, you can kind of take a look at this real quick and make your own decisions about it, but we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, I thought I removed this slide. I'm sorry, I didn't like the huge blocks of red. I think it's very harsh on the eyes. Basically, these are just basically things that we try to promote. We're not a gaming company that does crunch. We think it's unnecessary, and so we really try to make sure that we give everybody a good work-life balance. We have a very robust training program, making sure that people are, improving constantly. And it's a total immersion into the development of the game. In fact, there are several lines of code that exist in the game today that were written by interns. So we can move on to the next slide. But that's always a nice little tidbit to have, is that you can actually work on things that go live. It's not just running and getting people coffee. So again, this is branding. Basically, PR wanted me to make sure I had this in here. this is what we are doing again on an international scale, more for like our Minsk and St. Petersburg offices and Kiev offices. But we do offer a slew of different positions over there for interns. This is going to be something that we're going to continue to build on for the U.S. At the moment, we are pretty much dedicated to just engineering at this time. But again, as the Forge program continues to grow and envelop into the U.S., I do hope to see more of these positions continue to open up for interns as well here. Can move on. Or next, sorry. Nope, go back one. Oh, sorry. There we go. So this is Michael Jang. Austin, I believe you know Michael pretty well. He was a former UMich, or he is a UMich graduate. I believe he was part of the Wolverine Soft Club as well. We hired him on a couple of years ago after a successful internship with us. I won't read his quote for you, but I think just I'll give you guys a quick second to kind of read through that yourselves. But Michael's had a really good experience with us so far, and continues to be a part of our career fair practices with UMich. He past couple of years has participated actively in interviewing potential interns for Wargaming himself. So definitely so far having a great experience with us. Yeah, good to hear. Good to hear. Great. Well, let's go ahead and go on to the next one here. If you didn't get a chance to read that, I apologize. You can there. It's actually online and on LinkedIn as well. You can easily find it. Okay, so these are just a couple of tips about getting into the gaming industry. It's kind of playing off of what I had talked about a little bit earlier about different variations, but so we don't need to spend a ton of time here. But basically, the idea about the gaming industry is just first off, know what you want to do, right? Like if you want to be a 3D artist, then do that. Like you need to be focused everything that you do on becoming a 3D artist in the gaming industry. Don't just focus on doing one thing though. Like you don't want to solidify yourself as I only do character art, because you need to get that foot in the door. And if you pigeonhole yourself too much into the kind of 3D art that you create, for example, then it's going to be much harder for you to find that opportunity. But say, for example, you kind of just work on everything. You get a job as a hard surface modeler, but your true passion is still character art. Well, you at least got that first experience, so your next job or your next promotion, next project could be doing more character focused art. But you do want to make sure that you're giving yourself the opportunity to get that experience in the first place. So focus on what you want to do, but don't pigeonhole yourself too specifically or too nichely into one subject of it, because especially with the gaming industry, art, engineering, audio, like all of these things have subcategories and subcategories to those subcategories. So you don't want to necessarily get too stuck into doing just one thing. Wait until you're 10 years or 15 years in the industry with a bunch of experience under your belt before you start pigeonholing yourself like that. That point, go for it. Like at that point, you'll be known as the person who does character art, and that's the person people are going to come to. But until you get that to that level, make sure that you're getting as much experience as you can under your belt. Same thing goes for engineering. I mean, if you want to be, if your only focus is being a gameplay engineer, there should be no reason that you don't learn how to work with OpenGL and start learning more graphic stuff, or start really getting heavy into editing, like working with like blueprints in Unreal, or getting really involved in Unity. Just make sure that you're keeping those core fundamental skills sharp with C++. I mean, if you want to be in console and or PC development, like just know C++ like the back of your hand and never let those skills go. Great. So the other thing is, it the world is tough. Getting into the gaming industry can be a challenge. And there are always bills to pay, especially when those college, excuse me, my brain's lost, but basically like your or not scholarships, but your what you owe the college. I can't think right now. Those bills are going to come due. and you're going to have to pay for them somehow. And it might be really easy to take or easier to take a job outside of the gaming industry, even if your passion still the gaming industry. What I can say is you have a choice to make at that point because you don't want to get too sectioned off into the gaming industry. I would say it's harder to get back into the gaming industry than it is to get into the gaming industry to begin with. Because after, let's say, 5 years of working for an insurance company as a developer, even if it's in the same language, even if it's still C++ heavy, there are so many nuances that you didn't pick up that are so specific to gaming that for a hiring manager to take a chance on you as, because you'd be coming in not as a junior engineer, you'd be coming in at mid or maybe even senior level. For a hiring manager to justify paying you the salary of somebody like that without the experience is a much bigger risk. And it's a lot harder to actually get into it. So if you do have to take a job where it's not directly related to gaming, say as an engineer, but working for Instacart or something, just always try to continue doing something that's related to gaming on the side, building your own indie project, working, on different game jams. You don't want to get comfortable not being in the gaming industry because the second you do is going to be the moment that you're going to have a much harder time trying to get back. So those are my words of advice. Hopefully that meant something to somebody. And we can go on to the next slide because I do believe this is when. Okay, this is this is the slide we were supposed to be on to talk about that. But again, consider QA testing as an option to get in. But that's about basically as much as we need to talk about here. So we can go on to the next slide as well. Okay, so here's the tech stack. Now, I had originally approached our engineering team to say, "Hey, can somebody partner with me on, kind of going over our tech stack?" And the answer to that was, "No, we can't do that because we need more time to prepare an actual deck." And I said, "Okay, that's fair. I'll try to give me a couple of bullet points, and I'll talk about it as much as I can, and basically just kind of read those off to you guys." And then what I get back is a 30-page document of what our tech stack is. I'm like, okay, this is all I needed to begin with. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and preference what I'm going through here as I am going to read this to you, unlike the rest of the presentation where I was just kind of talking around it. I'm going to read this to you and have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. I will let you all make the understandings yourselves. I will not be able to answer questions on any of this information. It is way above my head and knowledge. As a recruiter, I know a little bit about everything, enough to be dangerous and enough to qualify people who are not qualified for the job. But I am not here to assess anybody's expertise as an engineer or otherwise. So this is all going to be more or less a foreign language to me. So I won't be able to answer any questions. I apologize that I don't have an expert. But we can still go through it, right? You still probably pick up a few things here or there. So our tech stack, the Despair engine. This is a custom engine. This is something that we've been basically working on for over a decade. This was first used for Fracture in 2008 for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Since then, we've also used it to expand Fear 3 in 2011, and then also Tanks console starting in 2014. Next slide. Majority of the code is C++. It's component-based, content-driven. One set of content runs all platforms. We support content layers for cross-generation titles like World of Tanks console. Supported platforms maximize performance across different hardware capabilities, abstract hardware differences away from game-level code. Windows, DE, D12, Xbox One, PlayStation. Middleware, we use Boost, Havix Physics, Lua, WWise for audio, OpenSSL, Scaleform, and Vivox, or Vivox, tomato. C++ reflection system. Reflection allows the game code to expose the properties of various game objects. The tool allows editing of reflected properties, loading, saving content, modifying runtimes for debugging. Source code. All source code is stored in Perforce. Each project has its own main branch. Programmers work in private branches. Most programmers have multiples of these. Visual Studio 2019 is used for development. You can go on to the next one. Cool. Tools. There is no single monolithic tool for development. One tool per resource type. Specialized tools for creating and modifying anything from game objects, levels, animation, localization, scripts, particle effects, cinematics, material graphs. Tools scripting. Many of the capabilities of our tools are exposed to Lua Script. Technical designers and artists often create scripts to import, create, and modify content. Next. Debugging and testing. So build system, we use TeamCity as our build system of choice. We have builds for each project of code, for code, resources, final package creation, and a variety of other purposes. Builds can be started manually or automatically. Unit tests. We have unit test modules for each of our libraries. Some, typically the low-level ones, are more populated than others. Unit tests are built with each code built in a run nightly by TeamCity build. Okay, smoke tests. We have TeamCity build, which does some similar automated tests for these tools. This runs automatically after each successful code build completion. The tests may catch common failures before the code is released to the content creators or even tested by QA. Static analysis of code. We use multiple static analysis systems to catch code quality issues that may lead to bugs in C++, C#, Lua, Python, and ActionScript. We have a TeamCity build, which does some similar automated testing of the tools. This runs automatically after each. Oh, that's a duplicate slide. Cool. Yep. I was like, wait a second, I just read that. Philosophy, we use assertions to detect problematic code. Bad content should never crash the game. New code should gracefully handle old data, at least for a reasonable amount of time. Okay. Automatic bug reporting. Crashes and failed assertions from official builds are automatically reported to Jira with screenshots, remark logs, and call stacks. Data mining. A vast array of statistics in and out of game are tracked with our instrumentation system. And that's it. Those are all the things I have to tell you. Again, I won't be able to answer any questions on the tech stack. That's just way outside of my understanding. But any other questions, happy to jump into it. In fact, I will let maybe Amber, you can tell me maybe the best way of going about this, if it would be better to have questions be posted in chat or just people shout them out themselves. You guys tell me how you'd like to handle questions.
I can just read them from the chat. We already have a couple in there. So, first question from Mr. Yarger. You mentioned your family had some doubts about video games as a career, which is something that his family and many others have had doubts with. Was there a particular fun moment where their minds changed? Did you show them something, or did they see a game that you were supported or contributed to?
I think when I told her, I think it was the moment that she really understood that there was profit in gaming was the moment that I told her that 16-year-old kid won like $1 million something dollars in Fortnite, that world tournament in Fortnite. I showed her the article about that, and I think her jaw literally hit the floor. She's like, I don't understand this. And then she started opening her mind. I started telling her more about like, how in South Korea, esports players, like competitors, are actually more popular than athletes, and they're more renowned. And I think all this kind of stuff, eventually started to pile on to the point where she was like, oh, okay, like this is an actual like viable industry. And then there was also It's just a good feeling to kind of be able to show that and be like, look, all this, all this time was not wasted. Like it actually gave me a bit. So when I did get a job in the gaming industry, she was actually very excited for me and didn't feel like it was something that I was going to be wasting efforts or taking a really risky move.
Yeah, uh, definitely. So are internships or junior opportunities currently available with the Forge? If so, where should Wolverines be applying?
I'm sorry, ask that question one more time. I feel
Are
like I missed something.
internships or junior opportunities available with the Forge right now? And if so, where should they be applying?
Right. No, that's a great question. So we are going to be attending the UMich Technical Career Fair on the 14th. Make sure that you do sign up for a spot with either myself, Martin Farron, or Michael Jang. Those are going to be the three people. The three of us are going to be kind of helming the reins on that. So definitely make sure that you get over there, sign up to have a conversation with us. And then essentially how it will work is that we're going to collect all the resumes, all the people that we think would be a good fit for our program, who kind of have the right motivations, and basically once we have collected all that information, weeded out all the people who have, very passive interest. Then we're going to kind of, get together with our technical directors and start, the official kind of interview process and start, really going through applications. So the internship that we are targeting will be for the summer of next year. Ideally, perfect world, we won't be in a pandemic anymore, and you'll actually be able to come into our office. So we do provide, obviously, it's a paid internship. Really, actually, it's very well paid internship. And so it's paid internship for the engineers. We will compensate cost of living and relocation expenses to an extent. So I know most of the people here probably live in Michigan or even on campus. Our office is in Chicago, so you would need to relocate. So you can be closer to the office during that time. But we have a lot of really good programs set up to help make sure that you're compensated for that and that you can get out there safely and securely. So we've done this before. We have a pretty good working method to make sure it's well taken care of.
Awesome. So what inspired the Despair engine, and what inspired the decision to create an engine rather than use an existing one?
Uh, that's a good question. I'm going to speculate on this question. I'm not going to provide you any sort of like, here, I'm an official Wargaming spokesman. I'm giving you an officially sponsored Wargaming slogan on this. I'm going to tell you what I think is probably the case, and I could be 110% wrong on it. So please take this with a grain of salt. Um, Back when we made the engine, there wasn't a whole lot going on. I mean, there weren't any like widely or vastly used engines out there. It's not like today where if you want to build a game from scratch, like you can just easily go out and get your license on an Unreal or even Unity, and just kind of start from there, even starting from blueprints. It wasn't the same back then. In 2008 it was created. I mean, I'm not an expert, right? But I don't know of any like massively popular, game engines that were being built for sale purposes back in 2008. Austin, maybe you can correct me on this. But to my knowledge, I don't think that was anything that was super popular back at that time. So I think the opportunity to create our own engine was more so out of necessity at the time. And since we had put all of those years of work into it, and we've gone through so many refactors of that system, of that engine, that at this point to throw it away for something completely different would be, I mean, sure, there are some positives to that. I mean, you switch over to say Unreal as the engine. Yeah, well then that opens up a ton of opportunities for people who have only had Unreal experience to come in and work on us. But that also means that's going to be a huge amount of manpower and hours to essentially change our entire game over to a completely new engine. Like the amount of engineering manpower involved in that is extremely expensive. And that doesn't move us forward, right? So again, thinking about video games as a business, we need to be doing everything to make money because money is what pays our employees. It's how I have a job, how I can afford a house and pay for the food my kids eat. And I appreciate that we make money. And so if we were to essentially stop moving our game forward just so we can switch our basically pick up the house and put it onto a new foundation. That doesn't change the game at all. That doesn't improve the player experience. That doesn't make players want to buy something or to spend their money in our game. It literally is just going to cost us, I'm speculating again here, but anywhere from hundreds of thousands of dollars to maybe millions of dollars in profits to just make a switch into something that, yes, it could maybe have some positive benefits down the road, but the immediate return is not going to be there. So it's all about, the ROI, return on investment. Is switching from the despair engine, which we have put a ton of hours, manpower into, and people who work for Wargaming know the ins and outs of like the back of their hand, to something completely new with its own challenges, its own bugs. Is the return on investment worth it at this time? And so far, the answer to that question has been no. Will it change in the future? Who knows? I can't say anything about it because I don't know. But that is kind of where the thought process is for it at this time. Hopefully that answered the question. Hopefully it was accurate. That's about as best I could do for you, though. But very good question.
Yeah, I think that's some fair reasoning. So you mentioned that the U.S. team is mostly focused on engineering for our internship opportunities.
Yes.
Do you mean like networking and engine code base focus, or are there opportunities for gameplay programming or other types of programming as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're open to pretty much anything at this time. I would say aside from maybe like more data analytics stuff, that would be a bit more focused to like Austin interns that we do have Austin interns that do data analytics from time to time. But for Chicago, Baltimore, Bellevue, they are primarily focused around, I would say, gameplay, graphics engineering, core tech, which is kind of like basically engine. We also would have tools, and I would even say like UI engineering.
So what kinds of experiences are you all looking for when considering candidates for internships? Are you looking for specific types of experiences, or do a bunch of them apply?
That's a really good question. I think it comes down to the individual projects in the portfolio, right? So if a big thing is to show as an intern is that you want to show what you're capable of now, because again, our internships are not go run and get me coffee. These are internships where you are going to actively be contributing to the code base itself. And so, as an intern, we still need to have confidence that, at least with guidance, you'll be able to do that without being a huge burden on any individual. Now, don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to insult anybody by saying you're a burden, but again, from a business perspective, this is an opportunity for somebody to learn, but we need to make sure that we're getting the best people to learn, the people who are the most enthusiastic, that have the most potential for growth. The people that we can see growing into a role officially as starting off as an associate developer and working their way all the way into like a lead developer. Like that's the way our brains work when we're considering which interns do we hire, and that is a very hard choice because there is a lot of competition. A lot of people. We do get several applicants, and we generally only have 2 to 3 spots that we're able to hire for. So it is a hard thing. And then once we have kind of narrowed down based off of like the classes you've taken, the portfolio, the amount of the amount of work and like what you've put into these projects you've worked on, these capstone projects. Then we also want to look at then we look at the interviews. Who is interviewing with us, right? Who is answering the more technical questions? Who's taking their time to like study and prepare for the interview? Who's taking the time to study and prepare themselves on the base knowledge of our games and like how we operate as a business? The more you can invest into the company you're interviewing with, the better your chances. So if and I'll even take wargaming out of this as just a general advice for interviewing as an intern. If you can put more time into researching everything that's important to the job you're applying for that company. So researching their tech stack, researching who the big players are in that, researching the company itself, what they do, what they make, what are their profits, what's the mission statement of the company. The more of this information you can have going into it, it just fuels fuels your ambition. It fuels you as a candidate to say, like, look, I take this seriously. Because you would be surprised how many people walk into an interview just saying, like, oh, it seemed like an interesting opportunity. And like that's the extent of it. But if you take somebody who, if I were looking at two people, right, as potential hires, and I saw someone who says, "Oh yeah, like I'm really smart," and maybe they are, so I've done all these really good things. Wargaming seemed pretty interesting, so I wanted to apply. Versus somebody who maybe doesn't quite have the same technical aptitude as the first person, but comes in with a plethora of, look, I know what you guys have done. I've researched your company. Like I'm really a big fan of all of your top players. Like I've looked into this. I've played your game. Here are my thoughts. Here are my opinions. Here what I would do. And I hear that. Like I am way more likely to want to hire that person because that person has more room to grow as a person, as a professional. So this is just going to be general interviewing advice. The more passion you can show in your interview, the more work and time you've taken out of your life to show them that you care that this is important to you, that you want this job, the more likely you are to get that job.
Hey, awesome. It looks like that's all the questions from the meeting.
Great.
Oh, actually, we might have one more.
Okay, let's do that.
Yes. I think Henry is typing it right now. Oh. I think that's all the questions. So
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to us about what you all do at Wargaming.
Yeah. Go ahead and hit that next slide for me real quick while you're at it. Just as a last piece. Just as my contact information. So if anybody wants to jot that down, if you have any questions, you can either connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can shoot me an email. Happy to chat with you outside of this conversation as well. If you think of questions at a later point. Do know that I am a little backed up at this time as far as responding. So if you don't get an email back from me in like a couple of days, know that I promise I will get to you. I swear I will. There's a lot of things going on at Wargaming right now, and we're trying to get, of course, ramped up for the career fair on Tuesday, and so it's a little bit wild, but do know that if you reach out to me, I will respond. I absolutely, that's my promise to you. We can definitely talk, and if need be, at a later point, even set up a time to chat if you had some really in-depth questions you wanted to go over. So very much try to be there to assist. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. I've just pinned the meeting slides and your email for anybody that wants to take a look at this later, wants to contact you later. So thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you guys for having me. It's been a blast. Hopefully, I was at least somewhat informative on this, and I do look on. Hope to see most of you at the actual career fair itself. Yeah, I'm glad we've got a lot of things coming together last minute, so it was glad that everything ended up working out very well, and despite the technical difficulties. Definitely a blast, and next year hopefully I'll be back with another presentation and have more interesting things to say. All right, you all have a wonderful day. Take care, great weekend, all that.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.